wonderful. I was thinking a four-letter word. It doesn't have to be a terrible word.
A
But
lot of terrible four-letter words.
yeah, I was gonna do rest. Um, or other ones. I've got a whole bag.
Ooh. You mentioned that a big part of your practice has to do with a process-based theory, or you also mentioned strengths-based
That's
theory.
right.
What exactly did you mean by strengths-based? That's something I was very curious
Yeah,
about.
so strengths based, I can't say it very well, but strengths based
Mm-hmm.
theory is actually something I learned about when I was in school for art therapy.
Okay.
So it's kind of the idea that every person has strengths, and that instead of trying to help people by saying, oh, you need to learn how to do this other thing, you need
Mm-hmm.
how to learn how to do this other thing, you approach it from a strengths based philosophy. So we go, okay, you have strengths. How can we use your strengths to help you
Mm-hmm.
in the things that you are already
Mm.
good at, the things you are already like, the things you already, have achieved? It's not something that you have to change who you are or what you're doing necessarily. It can be
Right.
more intentional. And so the idea that art and craft, it comes from a strengths based theory, is that we are approaching this in that everybody can make good art. Because I'm not the most technically skilled artist. I've never been. Um, but I have very creative strengths. And so I work with my art in ways that is like, oh, how can we use the things we're good at to communicate
Mm-hmm.
or to, create or whatever it is, our end
Mm-hmm.
product. The things I'm very good at are, again, meditative, repetitive, kind of fine detail, fine motor skills
Mm-hmm.
kind of things, but also about communicating to others about experiences. My strengths are connecting to people,
Mm-hmm.
and so what I hope to achieve with my art, like again, is something about helping other people to realize that they can create and that the way they do things is valuable, the way they are capable of doing things. And like
Mm-hmm.
that really ties into my own disabled experiences as well. So
Mm-hmm.
that over the last 5 years, especially, I've become more disabled. I've lost a lot of my mobility.
Okay.
I have joint issues,
Okay.
and those kinds of things where it's like, okay, so maybe I can't create everything the same way everybody else does. I use a lot of tools in my art. So like I use software to make these portraits where
Mm-hmm.
like some people love to think that I do this by eye. I would love to.
Mm-hmm.
I wish I was a genius and could do that. I can't. But using a tool doesn't make you less of an artist or less creative. There's
No.
so much that goes into the creation of these, the planning, the output.
Yeah.
I actually, again, you find out that I, the technical skill that I have is quite high. I sometimes forget that as far as embroidery goes. Again,
Mm-hmm.
I've very, very practiced.
Right.
Um, and while that is true, it's not essential to the work. It's
It's about bigger things.
it's about bigger things than that.
Yeah.
And so like a lot of my work I want to talk about like the elitism
Oh.
of art. I talk a lot about representation and how important representation is.
Mm-hmm.
And like I know we hear that a lot in like the media and stuff
Yeah.
nowadays where it's like,
Hollywood. Yeah.
"Oh, we need to see our people that look like ourselves." And
Mm-hmm.
like but a lot of people don't understand why that's important because a lot of times it's privilege. I know like I have my own privileges as well, obviously. Um, in that like as a white person, I've always seen myself reflected in the media. I have never not, never ever thought about that.
Right.
Until obviously recent years where I really started trying to think about that more intentionally. But as a young person, I didn't have any role models or see anybody in the media that was fat and happy, especially fat and happy about being fat.
Right.
I wouldn't, hopefully, would have spent so much of my life trying to be something that I'm not. And so, like, that was my big thing, is that I didn't feel like it was okay to be me for a lot of my life. It took me until I was like 30, really, before I was like, and like stopped at intentionally trying to make myself smaller and straighter and quieter and more typical. I just think that if we can see the possibilities for different people, people of different sizes, people of different, ethnicities, people of different experiences and abilities and backgrounds, like we all have so much to give.
It's very refreshing to hear you talk about all of that through the lens of joy. Now, thinking about it, a lot of stories about queer people, it's in the media at least, like a lot of it isn't stories of joy. It's the
No.
most depressing you'll ever see.
They're tragedies.
Tragedies,
right?
yeah.
Like
Yeah.
we talk about, even if you just want to, like, current example, The Whale. It's the only story we're ever told about fat people is about how sad and depressed and
Yeah.
horribly irresponsible we
Yeah.
are. And like, I'm done with that because that story hurt me. It made me believe that that was all I am. And that's not true. My body is also part of who I am. It's part of how I experience the world,
Yep.
how other people treat me in the world. And like, I can't divorce that. We can't separate those two things. Run it under a couple of stitches. My name is Allison Tunis. My pronouns are she and they. And I am a visual artist from Edmonton, Alberta. Yeah, I work to create images and opportunities for fat, queer, and disabled joy. I work in a lot of different mediums, but mostly cross stitch embroidery, and have been working on a large series called, working title, the Chronic Illness Art Project, for a couple of years now. The series I'm working on right now is a collaborative art series. So the Chronic Illness Art Project, I've partnered with 11 other people to create portraits of them using embroidery, but to have them guide what I'm doing and to make it more of a collaborative process. So it was originally, again, it still is engaging with concepts around like, what is our role as as an artist versus a model, and like, what is the relationship there, and how do we have those relationships consensually and respectfully. And through this process, it's been really exciting because it turns out everybody is an artist, and I don't say that sarcastically. Almost everybody that I ended up working with as a collaborator has their own art practice, whether it's a hobby or a professional or whatever it may be. And so I really started trying to work their own practices into the artworks as well, to connect more to their own stories, their own ways of experimenting and creating art. And so it's been really exciting. So portraiture works really well with collaboration. A person's portrait is so much of who they are, and collaboration, you're getting more of that individual's voice. So I've really looked for new ways to try to work together as an artist and for those who are non-artists. Again, they are all still. Working with embroidery came about sort of naturally for me. I started learning how to cross stitch when I was about 13 or 14 years old as a school project. And it was the process that really drew me to this medium of embroidery. I find it very soothing, it's very repetitive and almost meditative. Over the years, I picked it up as a hobby, as something that I just really enjoyed doing. And over time, I started trying to figure out how I could work with it in a fine art practice, especially because the medium is is so evocative of uh, concepts around women's work and traditional femininity and domesticity. Personally, I felt like I didn't fit into the norms of traditional femininity and what women were supposed to be, the idea of, anyway.
What do you think about the Art From Here project from Latitude
Yeah.
as a platform or a way of networking or building community?
Well, the Art From Here project is a really cool platform, specifically because it's not just asking artists, okay, tell me about what you're making, the typical. It's actually asking artists, one, what are you making or not making, which is a big part of the question. What's happening in your life? Because, again, such a shift in our world with the pandemic. Artists were impacted very strongly, like everybody. We all had to start working and thinking and existing in new ways. And so this project really gave us that platform to talk about what is it like being an artist right now? What are you working? Are you doing the things you normally do? Why or why not? But on top of that, it also provided a really key relational, connective aspect to it where we're involving other people. So Zoe Schneider wrote a beautiful reflection on my work. To have another artist respond to my work is really cool opportunity, and then to be able to share that together, the two of us, with a virtual studio visit and connecting to the community more largely, it's just a way of sort of existing as an artist and being seen that isn't your traditional, very fancy exhibition opening where we can all kind of exist a little bit more authentically